We are at the beginning of a new era. What does that mean for a new agriculture? Above all, it means learning a lot of new things, following new approaches. Via the prophetic word, for almost 5 decades, the kingdom of God has been giving innumerable indications and help for all areas of life. This also applies to the new agriculture for the new era, an agriculture that is based on respect for the life in the soil, in the plants and animals. In the new agriculture for the new era, it is necessary to observe, to gain experience and to learn from it, aware that all life forms a great unity. Today we'll learn why not only grain and vegetable plants grow in the fields of the new agriculture, but also lots of flowers and herbs. The variety of flowers is particularly great along the edge of the field.
We see here white flowering chamomile, we see poppies in beautiful red, cornflowers, which meanwhile have also become quite rare. These are the so-called field edges or field borders, which are sometimes narrower, sometimes wider. This is now a somewhat narrower field edge, but the special thing is that in the new agriculture these field edges are allowed to blossom. That is, wild herbs and plants grow there that also have flowers where the insects find food.
And so many insects, bees, bumblebees, and the most varied butterflies can be found in these blooming oases. In today's customary kind of agriculture, such flower strips are a seldom sight because
normally these beautiful flowers are mowed and chopped up just a few weeks before the harvest, when the plants are all in bloom. This means they are mowed and chopped up with a machine. Of course, also all the insects living there at the time. And in agricultural terminology, we talk about field edge hygiene, that is, keeping the edge of the field clean, because weeds grow there, so-called weeds, which bear seeds, which then later sprout in the field. And that is a special feature of the new agriculture, that we let these field edges bloom, even if later the plants sow themselves. We also see, for example, here in this field, that not only the field edge blooms, but that actually the whole field is blooming.
blooming fields? What in the conventional way of looking at things is considered a weed and is sprayed away is apparently welcome in the new agriculture for the new era.
The point is that every plant has its task for the field, for the insects, but also for the soil. And we notice that very different grasses, herbs and flowering plants grow in the various grain fields. The soil itself actually always knows what it needs. In one field, lots of chamomile grows between the grain stems, in another, a lot of poppies or cornflowers. Sometimes there are fields in which a lot of grasses grow, depending on what the soil needs, because the soil heals itself again and again via the plants that it lets grow. And the special thing about the new agriculture is that between the grain stalks, these, we don't call them weeds, This new agriculture for the new era, none of us thought it up. These are all tips and suggestions that we received from the Spirit of God, and in all these tips is always the same basic idea. It is the respect for life that we human beings, we farmers in agriculture, learn again to find this unity. And when I stand in the evening by such a field where everything is blooming at the edge of the field and see how insects collect the nectar, pollinate the flowers, and I just quietly let that work on me, then a connection builds up. And it is also clear to me that I can't possibly just come the next day with a mulching mower and just carelessly mow down this whole flowering strip. If you look more closely between the plants, there are crawling insects everywhere, there are beetles, ants, tiny animals, then I can't just heedlessly drive over it.
The fact that the absence of flowers in and around the fields has resulted in a rapid loss of insects cannot be overlooked. In Germany, 3/4 of all flying insects have disappeared over the course of less than 30 years. Ecologists are alarmed and see agriculture as the main cause of insect mortality. Now, government support programs for artificially sown flower strips are supposed to remedy the situation. This means that those who sow flowers at the edge of fields will be rewarded.
Das ist mit Sicherheit ein Schritt in die richtige Richtung, aber trotzdem muss man überlegen,
that's certainly a step in the right direction, but you still have to consider the fact that these are huge areas, huge fields where only monocultures grow, and then you have a small flowering strip at the edge, and that should then serve as food for all the insects and birds. The point is that the fields should blossom and be full of life, and that is also the goal of the new agriculture, so that the earth can really breathe again, that the fields can produce what the earth wants to let grow. If you look around at the landscape, far and wide, you will find almost only conventional farmed fields on which pesticides are sprayed and herbicides against these so-called weeds, and far and wide the insects can no longer find any food. And we have to realize that still around 1950, just in the wheat fields, just wheat, in Germany approximately 1 million tons of wild seeds were grown. These were all sources of food, the flowers for the insects and later the mature seeds for the birds. Now we wonder why actually the last bird in the agricultural landscape is almost only the skylark. There is no more food. The birds can no longer find anything in the fields. Therefore, we hardly hear any birds in the free nature, and the absurd thing is that meanwhile in large cities a larger variety of species can be found than in the nature. We think that out in the countryside we are in nature, but due to the massive use of pesticides and, of course, also artificial fertilizers, which create conditions where certain wild herbs and plants no longer grow, agriculture has been swept clean, so to speak, and the animals no longer find any food.
No sprays or artificial fertilizers are used in this wheat field, and no manure or slurry. It is still cultivated as before in a 3-field system of 2 years of crops followed by a fallow year. Here, the animals find poison-free, healthy food, the birds, rabbits, deer, and also the people.
We can see that the wheat is just as beautiful here in this field, and I would say that this new agriculture is a nature-based agriculture, meaning that the soil gives what it can in a natural way. And it is a sure harvest that it gives us, but there is also room for all the wild herbs and flowers that grow in the fields, which may not serve us as food, but they serve all the insects and birds as food. This life forms a large unit, and in this unit there is a place for everyone. There is food for people, there is food for birds, there is food for insects, and of course there is also food for deer, hares, which often raise their young in such beautiful flowering and fragrant fields. Often we have deer in such fields, or hares that give birth to their young.
Was man auch immer wieder sieht in unseren Feldern für die neue Landwirtschaft.
What you can see again and again in our fields for the new agriculture are areas where no crop grows at all, for example, no wheat or no rye, and where everything is simply a bit sparser and not so high. And these are places, also known as lark windows, where the skylark, for instance, finds the possibility to lay its eggs and raise its young. For us farmers in the new agriculture, there's nothing more beautiful than to stand by such a field in the evening and see how the animals live in the field, how a deer bounds through it, or how the skylarks rise for their song flight. This is simply part of learning to find our way back into this unity, that all life forms a unity and that all life bears in itself the same power from God as we people do.
Wenn man sich mal, das ist immer so ein schöner Vergleich, wenn man ein Feld
When you look at one of our fields in the new agriculture and right next to it there is a conventionally cultivated field, this is always such a nice comparison. You notice such an extreme difference. You can hear the birds chirping here, you can hear the bumblebees and bees buzzing here, and next to it there is just silence. There is nothing, even if you look at the soil between the plants. There is just bare earth. You can literally feel that the soil is dead, that there is no life in it. And if we look here between the grain stalks, how the ground is covered with nothing but wild herbs and plants, that's a completely different picture.
These wild herbs and plants are a nuisance in conventional agriculture, and herbicides are extensively used to combat them. On average, 16,000 tons of weed killers are applied to the fields each year in Germany alone. The result? No more wild herbs or plants, no more flowers in the fields, and therefore no more insects, no birds, no room for animals. For the farmers of the new agriculture, it is precisely the diversity, the colorful plant community on the fields that is an expression
Eine
of life,
Erfahrung, die
and
wir
it's very
Landwirte für
welcome.
die neue Landwirtschaft schon gesammelt haben.
One experience that we farmers have already gained for the new agriculture is that all plants on the field are connected with each other, and we say that they communicate with each other. Every wild plant that grows has its own color, its own fragrance, its own essential oils, and we often hear from customers who eat the bread made from grain grown in such fields that the bread has a unique flavor. We are convinced that if there were a monoculture here, only grain stalks beside grain stalk, then the grain would never have this variety of flavors. And we know now that the plants are all connected through their roots and exchange information with each other, and you can imagine what the root network is like in such a field and how the plants share nutrients with one another. Chamomile, for example, has a very intense smell and taste, and you can imagine that this certainly also has an effect on the grain that we harvest later.
A completely different picture needs to be gained regarding agriculture itself. What does it depend on? How is it possible for good, healthy crops to grow and flourish? Is what one learns in agricultural schools still valid in the new agriculture for the new era?
This agriculture for the new era is really all about learning, gaining experience, to try things out, to see how the fields react, how the plants react. It is not a cultivation technique in which we mindlessly say we do this or that, but it is always about how every field is different, every soil is different, that we simply learn from the experiences that we gain. Helping animals, saving lives. This is what the International Gabriele Foundations stand for. They develop habitats for free-living animals, oases of life. A peaceful land where the all-love of the Creator can be felt more and more. In their beauty and diversity, all life forms are God's creation. People with a heart for nature care and provide for animals in need. Thereby, they orient themselves to the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, particularly to the guiding principle, do to others as you would have them do to you.
Hallo.
Hello,
Malvine.
Malvine.
Malu?
Malu?
Ja?
Haben sich versteckt.
They're hiding. Definitely. The big day is here.
Ist jetzt da?
Are they actually brother and sister?
No, Malvine came alone. She was about 4 weeks old. She was found by people walking in the woods. They watched for a long time to see whether Mama was nearby, and since she didn't come, they took her to an animal clinic. Fortunately, Malu joined her relatively quickly. People living nearby heard that an adult marten had died and thought, well, perhaps that was the mother of the little one. So they looked actually for the little one, and one of the 2 young ones had died. And Malu was still there.
There's a difference between pine martens and stone martens. We recognize stone martens, as Katrin explains, by a light spot in their throat and a pale nose. And unlike the pine martens, they have no hair on the soles of their feet. As we can see with Malu and Malvine, martens are very skillful climbers and can leap up to 2 meters.
They've gotten along well right from the beginning.
That's not something to be taken for granted.
No, but they're really like brothers and sisters. They play together wonderfully. In the beginning, they cuddled up with each other and mainly slept. And then they needed more and more exercise. In the beginning, they were in a very small area. And then they came into this aviary. And as you can see, Malvini really enjoys being in motion.
She's certainly the livelier of the two.
Absolutely, they have lots of fun games.
So even though they are both Martins, they do have quite different characters, don't they?
Totally. It's like with people, isn't it? Animals have their character, and Malvini is totally daring. She really takes high leaps and just goes with her head. Both are trusting.
They've known you for quite a while, or how long have you been caring for them now?
Well, Malvini came here at about 4 weeks of age, and she's been with us for about 8 weeks.
And can you tell me why they should actually move out of this nice area today?
Well, it is nice, but it's already gotten too small. We'll take them to a wooded area where a special aviary has been built, and so they'll come into more natural surroundings.
That means that the goal is that they will one day live in freedom.
Definitely, that's the next step.
So today is now the next step, and those are the transportation boxes?
The boxes are ready for both of them, and we'll take them along.
Gute Reise, ihr zwei.
Carrying Malu and Malvina in their box, we set out into the woods. Here in the midst of the animal's natural environment, a large aviary has been set up. Daniel is finishing the last details, and then everything is ready for the newcomers.
Hello, Daniel.
Hello.
Hello, you're here too. Great.
Everything ready?
Yes, everything's done. Have a look. Hey, you two.
Looks like they had a little nap on the way. Malu is still sleeping.
Ich glaube, der hat ein bisschen Stress gehabt. Hey, wollt ihr euch mal umgucken hier?
Na, trau dich.
Hey, be brave. Be daring.
Ja, mich nimmt die
Noch nicht so ganz.
Not quite sure yet.
No? Well, look here.
A real woods floor here,
Yes.
similar to a forest floor.
Yes, we put in bark mulch so that it's like in the woods.
Guck mal.
Look here.
Guck mal hier.
Malvina is here too.
Sniffing around, first of all.
If everything is in order.
Daniel, how long will they stay in this area?
Well, the offspring stay with their parents until into the autumn, and we'll now care for them here in the aviary for several more weeks. Not that they'll be totally set out then, because they can always come back until at some point they can live independently.
Do they do this often?
Yes, when they're feeling good. They even climb up the wire mesh.
They're always on the go, right?
Yeah, it's great that they stay together, really nice.
They're truly such totally dear animals when you can watch them up close. But usually Martins aren't that popular. Most people associate Martins with having their car ignition cables chewed through, for instance.
Regarding the ignition cables you just mentioned, the problem isn't that they are bad animals that want to harm us, but rather it's because we human beings bring chaos into the animals' habitats. For example, the car. Martins have a very strong territorial instinct, which means that they have an area that they defend against other martins, and they mark it.
About how large is such a territory?
Well,
you know?
it varies. Depending on the food supply, it can be between 50 and 80 hectares. And the martins mark this territory, and if a car, which is a favorite object for marking, by leaving his scent in the engine compartment, now drives into the territory of a rival martin and stays there overnight,
The car practically carries the scent of the other marten.
Yes, it carries this scent, and the other marten gets mad and says, "Hey, what's this other marten doing here in my territory?" And it bites into the cable to get rid of the smell. That's not intentional in a bad way, but rather a very natural behavior. I think that knowing this, we can react differently. There are enough effective marten protectors available for cars.
Martens are very intelligent and adapt extremely well. Because their natural habitat is being cut back more and more by people, we no longer encounter them in wooded areas and hedges, but ever more often in villages and towns. Then, of course, there are encounters with people, for example, when the little fellows choose an attic for a new domicile.
Of course, when the young martens then get bigger, they also make a lot of noise romping around up there, and it may also smell a bit like martens. But why not put some wire mesh over the access to the attic so that they can no longer get in? You don't have to call a hunter right away.
You're really saying a lot here about our behavior, man's relationship with animals, and somehow it's also about how people treat martens and simply consider them to be pests.
I think that on the whole, since you mentioned the relationship of human beings with animals, people actually always feel bothered or somehow threatened by animals. It is human beings who actually only take from nature and then even get annoyed by nature. I think that when we learn to change our way of thinking so that it becomes a sense of unity, a being for one another, then the marten will have its place too.
But you're also working for this, right?
Yes, I believe that more and more people are recognizing that all of nature, which man is also part of, belongs together, and it will only work when everyone pulls together. And the International Gabriele Foundation is active for this kind of making amends to nature and the animals. That's why we create habitats for the animals, why we again build up woods, wetland areas, stone biotopes where the animals can subsist. And the motto of the International Gabriele Foundation is helping animals, saving life. And as we have already seen by the example of these two young martens, I believe that this is really worthwhile. Because every living being has the right to an unscathed life. And mostly humankind is to blame that an animal has to come to such an emergency situation, and therefore it is our duty to also help.
When we now see these two here, they are really such dear animals. I've seldom seen martens so close up. I'm happy that you could help them and that they now really have a future in a suitable habitat where they can lead a worthy life.
Yes, I think we're all glad about that. I think that now the two of them would like a little snack.
Time to eat, right?
Yeah, Katrin.
It's ready.
Wow, you've really set up a great buffet.
Martens eat everything. And our two also love. Okay, we'll spread it.